You know, if we're honest with ourselves, democracy isn't something that arrives fully formed, polished, and permanent. Most people overlook this quiet truth. It is fragile, and its strength depends not on monuments or speeches, but on the daily choices of ordinary people, choices to listen when it's easier to shout, to persuade when it's easier to dismiss, to show up when indifference would be simpler. And yet, in the mid-2020s, we find ourselves at a crossroads. Across the globe, trust is eroding, cynicism creeping into the spaces where civic courage once thrived, and institutions that were meant to safeguard our liberties now feel vulnerable under the weight of apathy and extremism. The question that haunts me and ought to haunt all of us is this: can a democracy survive when its citizens forget that it is theirs to nurture, theirs to defend, and theirs to shape? When I think back on the arc of human history, the story of self-rule is never a straight line. Societies rise and falter, sometimes because of external threats, but often because the people themselves forget that democracy requires work, patience, and, above all, empathy. In this era, the mid-2020s, we are witnessing a deepening polarization not born merely of disagreement, but of retreat. Individuals withdrawing into echo chambers, communities fragmenting, and a growing temptation to treat compromise as weakness. We see the consequences in places where elections are undermined, where leaders refuse to concede gracefully, where the very idea of truth is disputed for partisan gain, and yet, alongside the peril, there is hope. Courage appears in the choices of people who refuse to surrender to division, neighbors reaching across cultural or political divides, young people organizing to amplify voices that were once ignored, communities finding ways to assert that pluralism is not a vulnerability, but the lifeblood of our collective strength. I've carried these lessons with me through much of my own life. Growing up between cultures, I learned early that the world doesn't hand out fairness, you have to earn it. And often, you earn it together. When I was organizing in Chicago, I saw firsthand how small acts of connection, bringing people together around a shared goal, convincing someone to trust a process they once doubted, could spark change far beyond the immediate task. In the Oval Office, the stakes were higher, the consequences more permanent, yet the principle remained the same. Democracy thrives when people see themselves not merely as spectators, but as participants. There were nights when the weight of decisions felt almost unbearable, moments when the noise of cynicism seemed deafening. And yet, it was the quiet work, the conversations with citizens, the efforts to forge coalitions, the insistence on facts and fairness that reminded me this is how progress is made. Not in grand gestures alone, but in persistent, sometimes painstaking efforts to hold our institutions and ourselves accountable. At its core, this moment teaches us something profound about human nature. Democracy is a mirror. It reflects both our noblest impulses and our deepest flaws. It demands that we embrace a paradox, that we can be fiercely loyal to principle while remaining open to dialogue, that we can insist on justice while acknowledging the real fears and grievances of those who disagree with us. Leadership, in this sense, is not about commanding from above, but about inspiring from within, about understanding that the health of our society is inseparable from the courage and conscience of its citizens. It reminds us that the arc of justice doesn't bend automatically. It bends only when we collectively act, when we choose day after day to prioritize unity over cynicism, empathy over dismissal, and long-term good over the fleeting comfort of certainty. And it underscores a lesson I've carried from the neighborhoods of Chicago to the corridors of power. Progress is slow, messy, and often frustrating, but it is possible, and it is worth every ounce of effort. So as I reflect on what democracy needs most right now, I am drawn back to a simple truth. It needs us, not just our votes, though those matter, not just our voices, though they echo through the chambers of power. It needs our willingness to build bridges, to teach civility through example, to bear the responsibility of pluralism with patience and resolve. It calls for empathy, for the quiet courage to engage, to argue, to compromise, and to persist even when the path forward is unclear. And as we look to the future, we must ask ourselves, are we willing to do the hard, often invisible work that democracy demands? Can we summon the patience to see pluralism not as a compromise of values, but as the instrument of justice? And ultimately, will we rise each day with the understanding that the fate of self-rule rests not in the hands of a few, but in the unwavering commitment of the many?